Question 19. Doesn't the significant role women had in ministry with Paul show that his teachings do not mean that women should be excluded from ministry? Yes. But the issue is not whether women should be excluded from ministry. They shouldn't be. There are hundreds of ministries open to men and women. We must pose our questions more carefully. Otherwise we obscure the truth from the start. The issue here is whether any of the women serving with Paul in ministry fulfilled roles that would be inconsistent with a limitation of the eldership to men. We believe the answer to that question is no. Tom Schreiner has dealt with this matter more fully in Chapter 11 of Recovering Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. But we can perhaps illustrate the matter with two significant women in Paul's ministry. Paul said that Euodia and Syntyche labored side by side with me in the gospel together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers. Philippians chapter 4 verses 2-3. There is wonderful honor given to Euodia and Syntyche here for their ministry with Paul. But there are no compelling grounds for affirming that the nature of the ministry was contrary to the limitations that Paul set forth in 1 Timothy chapter 2 verse 12. One must assume this contrariety in order to make a case against these limitations. Paul would surely say that both the overseers and the deacons, mentioned in Philippians chapter 1 verse 1, were fellow workers with him when he was there. And that means one can be a fellow worker with Paul without holding a position of authority over men. We are assuming from 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 2 and chapter 5 verse 17 that what distinguishes an elder from a deacon is that the responsibility for teaching and governance was the elders and not the deacons. Paul praises Phoebe as a servant or deacon of the church at Syntyche since, as he puts it, she has been a patron of many and of myself as well. Romans chapter 16 verses 1-2. Some have tried to argue that the Greek word behind patron really means leader. This is doubtful, since it is hard to imagine, on any account, what Paul would mean by saying that Phoebe became his leader. He could, of course, mean that she was an influential patroness who gave sanctuary to him and his band, or that she used her community influence for the cause of the gospel and for Paul in particular. She was a very significant person and played a crucial role in the ministry. But to derive anything from this term that is contrary to our understanding of 1 Timothy chapter 2 verse 12, one would have to assume that Phoebe exercised authority over men. The text simply doesn't show that.